It's 2 in the morning in a Seattle mansion. A woman stands alone in an industrial kitchen, trembling so hard she drops a cast iron skillet. She's clutching an eviction notice. 48 hours until her elderly mother gets transferred to the kind of care facility where people go to be forgotten. And then the door opens. The man standing there? Kang Min-jun. They call him the Phantom on the streets. A Korean Mafia boss so feared that rival gangs whisper his name like a curse. A man who once walked into an enemy warehouse alone and emerged while it burned behind him. He should terrify her. But what happens next will shatter everything you think you know about power, protection, and the dangerous line between the two. Because when Min-jun finds his black maid, Martha Burris, breaking down in his kitchen, he doesn't fire her. He doesn't threaten her. Instead, he asks 2 questions that will change both their lives forever. Who made you cry? And tell me what you need, I'll handle it. What Martha doesn't know is that Min-jun has been watching her for months. Not through cold surveillance cameras, but the way a man watches something precious and unexpected. She doesn't know he's already aware of the predatory lender bleeding her dry. She doesn't know Park Sung-ho, the man destroying her life, is actually a front for a rival syndicate trying to plant spies in Min-jun's organization. And she definitely doesn't know that her refusal to betray Min-jun, her choice to lose everything rather than become their informant, has already sealed her fate. She belongs to him now, whether she wants it or not. This is the story of a woman who thought she was invisible and the deadly man who saw her when no one else did. It's about loyalty bought not with fear, but with an act of unexpected gentleness in a kitchen at 2 in the morning. It's about what happens when a mafia boss decides to step into someone's world and burn down everyone who dared to threaten them. Before we dive into this powerful story, I want to be upfront. This video took over 12 hours of research, writing, and editing to create. Every detail, every emotional beat, every twist in Martha and Min-jun's journey has been carefully crafted to give you the full cinematic experience. If you value the hard work behind these stories, hitting that subscribe button would mean so much. It tells me you want more stories like this, stories about unlikely connections, dangerous protectors, and love that ignites in the darkest places. Now, let's get started. Let me take you back to where it all began. 3 months before that kitchen breakdown. Back to the day Martha Burris walked through the doors of Min-jun's estate with desperation in her heart and no idea that the most dangerous man in Seattle was about to become her salvation. 3 months earlier, Martha Burris had stood outside the iron gates of Min-jun's estate with a resume that was mostly lies and a heart full of desperate hope. The staffing agency had called it a unique opportunity, live-in maid position for a private employer, excellent pay, room and board included. They didn't mention that the employer was Kang Min-jun. They didn't mention the Phantom. But Martha didn't care who he was. She needed $15,000 for her mother's nursing home, and she needed it yesterday. The estate was massive. 10 bedrooms, marble floors that stretched like frozen lakes, windows that framed Seattle's skyline like paintings. And silence. The kind of silence that felt expensive, carefully maintained, dangerous to disturb. Min-jun had interviewed her himself. Sat behind a desk of black lacquer while his eyes, cold, calculating, missing nothing, studied her like she was a problem to be solved. You understand discretion, Ms. Burris? His English was perfect, barely touched by an accent. Yes, sir. You'll see things. Hear things. People will come and go at unusual hours. Martha kept her face neutral. I'm just here to clean, sir. Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe. Or respect. That's the correct answer. He hired her on the spot. The first week was a crash course in invisible survival. Martha learned to recognize the hierarchy of Min-jun's organization by the deference in their bows. She learned which rooms to clean at dawn and which to avoid entirely. She learned that bloodstains came out easier with cold water and hydrogen peroxide, and that some questions would get you killed faster than loyalty ever would. But she also learned something unexpected. Min-jun was kind to her. Not warm. Not friendly. But there was a careful respect in how he addressed her, how he ensured she had proper meals, how he never raised his voice even when his lieutenants cowered. It was the kind of kindness that came from a man who understood what it meant to be powerless, even if he'd long since stopped being that person himself. Martha told herself not to notice. Told herself he was still a criminal, still dangerous, still someone she should fear. But late at night, when she heard him playing piano in the East Wing, melancholy Korean melodies that drifted through the mansion like ghosts, she wondered who Kang Min-jun had been before he became the Phantom. Then Park Sung-ho entered her life, like a virus. It started with a letter. Professional letterhead, compassionate language, a lifeline offered to a drowning woman. Her mother's care facility was increasing rates. Martha's 3 jobs weren't enough. She needed help, and Park's lending company specialized in helping people just like her. The first meeting happened at a coffee shop in Belltown. Park was handsome in that polished, corporate way. Expensive suit, warm smile, eyes that crinkled with practiced sympathy. He made the loan sound simple. $15,000 at 12% interest. Completely manageable. Martha should have known better. Should have seen the trap. But desperation makes you stupid, makes you sign papers without reading the fine print, makes you believe in salvation that doesn't exist. The interest wasn't 12%. It was 12% per month compounding. With origination fees, processing fees, late payment penalties that kicked in if you were even a day behind. Within 6 weeks, Martha's $15,000 had ballooned to $43,000. Within 3 months, it hit $63,000 and climbing. But the money wasn't the real trap. Park started calling her. Casual at first. How's work going at the estate? Must be interesting, working for someone like Kang Min-jun. I bet you see all kinds of things there. Then, the questions got more specific. Does he have many visitors? Do you ever clean his office? Has he mentioned any business dealings lately? Martha felt ice spread through her veins. She wasn't stupid. She knew exactly what Park wanted, exactly what he was really asking for. The loan had never been about helping her. It had been about buying access to Min-jun's world through someone desperate enough to be exploited. I don't know anything, Martha said, her voice steady despite the fear. I clean. That's all. Park's voice lost its warmth. That's unfortunate, Martha. Because your debt just became due in full. You have 30 days to pay $63,000, or we start seizing assets. Your car. Your mother's belongings. And then we contact her care facility about moving her to county services. The threat hung in the air like poison. Unless, Park continued, smooth as silk, you decide to be more cooperative. A little information here and there. Nothing major. Just enough to help us understand Min-jun's operations better. Do that and your debt disappears. Your mother stays exactly where she is. Martha had hung up without answering. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, Park had called 17 times. Sent 12 emails. Shown up at her mother's nursing home twice. Standing in the parking lot like a promise of violence, making sure Martha saw him, making sure she understood the threat wasn't empty. And Martha said nothing. Did nothing. Refused every offer. Rejected every plea. Chose eviction and ruin over betrayal. Because in 3 months of working for Min-jun, he'd never once treated her as anything less than human. He'd never leered, never threatened, never made her feel small or disposable. In a life full of people who'd used her and discarded her, Min-jun's cold professionalism felt like dignity. She wouldn't betray that. Not even to save herself. What Martha didn't know was that Min-jun's security team had flagged Park's company the moment her name appeared in their system. Didn't know that Min-jun had been monitoring every call, every email, every parking lot intimidation. Didn't know he'd watched her refuse Park's offers again and again. Watched her choose loyalty over survival. Didn't know that each refusal had shifted something in Min-jun's carefully controlled world. The Biko faction, the White Tiger syndicate Park worked for, had been probing Min-jun's territory for months. Small encroachments at first. A shipment intercepted here. A lieutenant approached there. Testing his defenses, looking for weaknesses, trying to find a way inside his organization. Martha was supposed to be that way in. But she becomes something else entirely. Something Min-jun hadn't anticipated, hadn't planned for, hadn't protected himself against. She becomes someone he cared about. At this point, everything is about to change. But first, are you Team Martha, the woman who'd rather lose everything than compromise her integrity? Or are you Team Min-jun, the deadly protector who solves problems with permanent solutions? Let me know in the comments, because what happens next will shock you. The night Martha broke down in the kitchen, Min-jun had been in his study reviewing intelligence reports on the Biko faction. His second-in-command, Lee Jae-sung, had just confirmed what they'd suspected for weeks. Park Sung-ho wasn't just running a predatory lending operation. He was the Biko faction's recruitment specialist. He found vulnerable people, trapped them in impossible debt, then forced them into service. Drivers who moved weapons. Cleaners who planted surveillance devices. Accountants who cooked books and skimmed money. And now they wanted Martha to spy on the Phantom himself. She's refused them 14 times, Jae-sung had said, pulling up transcripts of Martha's calls. Park is getting desperate. He's threatening to move her mother to Evergreen County Care. Min-jun's jaw had tightened. Evergreen was a nightmare facility. Understaffed, unsanitary, investigated twice for elder abuse. Sending someone there was essentially a death sentence. How much does she owe? $63,000. Started at 15 with predatory terms. Min-jun had stood, walked to the window overlooking his estate. Somewhere below, Martha was finishing her evening duties. Probably exhausted. Definitely terrified. Absolutely refusing to break. Pay off the debt, he'd said quietly. Make it disappear from their system entirely. Jae-sung had hesitated. Sir, if we do that, the Biko faction will know we're protecting her. It'll escalate things. Good. Min-jun's voice had gone cold. I want them to know. I want Park Sung-ho to understand exactly what he's done by threatening someone under my roof. He'd been heading to his study to make the arrangements when he'd heard it. The crash from the kitchen. The sound of something breaking. And when he'd opened that door and seen Martha pressed against his refrigerator, tears streaming down her face, eviction notice crumpled in her shaking hands, something inside him had cracked. Because Martha Burris wasn't just an employee anymore. She wasn't just someone who'd refused to betray him. She was someone who reminded him of what he'd lost. Someone who still believed in loyalty and dignity despite a world determined to strip both away. Someone worth protecting, worth fighting for, worth burning down empires to keep safe. And the Phantom had just decided to go to war. The morning after the kitchen breakdown, Martha woke to find an envelope slipped under her bedroom door. Inside was a single piece of paper with an address in Seattle's International District and a time. 2 p.m. No signature. No explanation. But she knew it was from Min-jun. Her hands trembled as she got dressed. The eviction notice was gone from where she'd left it on her nightstand. Burned just like he'd said. But the weight of her debt hadn't disappeared with it. Park Sung-ho was still out there, still circling, still waiting for her to break. Martha found Min-jun in his study, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that made the room feel suspended above the city. He looked different in daylight, younger somehow, the harsh edges of his reputation softened by natural light. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Martha sat, spine straight, hands folded in her lap like she was facing a judge. Min-jun slid a folder across the desk. Park Sung-ho, also known as Stephen Park. Born in Los Angeles, moved to Seattle 5 years ago. His lending company is a front for the Biko faction, the White Tiger Syndicate. Martha's breath caught. She'd suspected Park was dangerous, but this confirmed her worst fears. They've been trying to infiltrate my organization for months, Min-jun continued, his voice matter-of-fact, clinical. You weren't their first attempt. You were just the most promising. Because I was desperate, Martha said quietly. Because you had access. Min-jun leaned back in his chair. They chose you carefully, Martha. Single woman, financial pressure, elderly parent in care. They profiled you, calculated your breaking point, set the trap perfectly. Shame burned hot in Martha's chest. I never told them anything. I know. Something shifted in Min-jun's expression, a softness that didn't belong on the face of a man called the Phantom. That's why we're having this conversation instead of a very different one. He opened the folder, revealing surveillance photos. Park meeting with men in expensive suits. Park outside her mother's nursing home. Park at the coffee shop where they'd first met. The address I gave you is where Park operates. Not his office, his real operation. Where they track their marks, plan their recruitments, store their files. Min-jun's eyes met hers. I'm going there today to end this. And I want you to come with me. Martha's heart stuttered. Why? Because you deserve to see the man who terrorized you face consequences. Because you've earned the right to witness his world burn. Min-jun stood, moved to the window. And because I want you to understand exactly what I am before you decide whether to stay or run. The honesty of it stunned her. This was a test, she realized. Not of her loyalty. He already knew she was loyal. But of her stomach for his world, for the violence that lived beneath his carefully tailored suits. What if I can't handle it? Martha asked. Then I'll have my driver take you anywhere you want to go. New city, new identity, your mother transferred to the best facility in the country. All expenses covered. Min-jun turned to face her. But you'll be free of this. Free of me. The offer should have been tempting. Should have been exactly what Martha wanted. But instead, she felt something twist in her chest. Something that didn't want to run, didn't want to be free of him. And, if I can handle it? Min-jun's smile was slight, dangerous. Then we discussed new terms. The drive to the International District was silent. Martha sat in the back of Min-jun's black sedan, watching Seattle blur past the tinted windows. Jae-sung drove, his eyes constantly scanning mirrors, checking angles. 2 more cars followed. Min-jun's security team, shadows within shadows. The building was unremarkable. 3 stories, brick facade, a medical supply company on the ground floor. Park's operation ran from the 2nd floor, hidden behind a dental office that didn't actually treat patients. Stay close to me, Min-jun said as they exited the car. Don't speak unless spoken to. And if things go wrong, Jae-sung will get you out. Martha nodded, her mouth too dry for words. They entered through a side door. No forced entry, no broken locks. Min-jun's people had already been here, had already disabled security, had already ensured that when the Phantom arrived, he'd be expected. Park was in the main office, surrounded by filing cabinets and computer monitors displaying financial records. He looked up as they entered, and Martha watched the color drain from his face. Mr. Kang, Park said, standing too quickly, chair scraping. I didn't. We weren't expecting. No, you weren't. Min-jun's voice was ice. But Martha was. Weren't you, Park? Park's eyes darted to Martha, recognition followed by fear. I don't know what she told you, but she told me nothing. Min-jun moved deeper into the room, his men fanning out behind him. She refused you 14 times. Chose eviction over betrayal. Chose to protect someone she barely knew over saving herself. Martha watched Park's face cycle through emotions, confusion, calculation, desperate fear. That kind of loyalty is rare, Min-jun continued. It's valuable. It's the kind of thing that makes a man like me very protective. Park raised his hands in surrender. Look, it was just business. The Biko faction wanted information, I provided opportunities. No harm intended. You threatened her mother. Min-jun's voice dropped to something deadly. You hunted a vulnerable woman, trapped her in impossible debt, then terrorized her when she refused to break. That's not business, Park. That's predation. I can fix this, Park said quickly. The debt, it's gone. Erased. She's free. Martha felt shock ripple through her. Gone? Just like that? You think that's enough? Min-jun asked. You think erasing numbers from a screen undoes the fear? The sleepless nights? The desperation?
Park was sweating now.
What do you want? I want you to understand something. Min-jun stepped closer. Martha Burris is under my protection. Anyone who threatens her threatens me. Anyone who touches her business becomes my business. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Park stammered. Good. Min-jun gestured to Jae-sung, who stepped forward with a tablet. Then you won't mind signing over your entire client list to me. Every name, every debt, every piece of leverage you've accumulated. Park's eyes went wide. I can't do that. The Biko faction will kill me. Then you have a choice to make. Min-jun's smile was terrible. Die quickly now, or slowly later. Either way, this operation ends today. I need to pause here because what you're about to witness changed everything. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between safety and doing what's right? Share your story below, because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about justice and revenge.
Park signed.
His hand shook so badly he could barely hold the stylus, but he signed every document, transferred every file, handed over every piece of leverage he'd spent years accumulating. And with each signature, Martha watched his empire crumble. But she also watched something else. The way Min-jun's men moved through the office, photographing documents, copying hard drives, dismantling an operation with surgical precision. This wasn't random violence. This was calculated, methodical, strategic. This was how the Phantom operated. When they finished, Min-jun turned to Martha. There are 73 people in Park's files. 73 families he's been exploiting. I'm erasing every debt, returning every seized asset, making sure they never hear his name again. Martha's throat tightened. Why? Because you asked me what I'd do to help you, and I don't do anything halfway. Min-jun's expression softened. And because maybe it's time the Phantom did something other than haunt the city. They left Park in his demolished office, surrounded by empty filing cabinets and worthless computers. Jae-sung had already tipped off federal authorities about financial crimes, immigration violations, connections to organized crime. Park would be in custody before sunset, and the Biko faction would learn that targeting Min-jun's people came with consequences that extended far beyond simple retaliation. In the car, Martha finally found her voice. Thank you. Min-jun looked at her, really looked at her, and Martha saw something she hadn't expected in those dark eyes. Vulnerability. Want. The careful hope of a man who'd forgotten what it felt like to protect someone instead of simply eliminating threats. Don't thank me yet, he said quietly. The Biko faction won't let this go unanswered. I've just painted a target on both our backs. Then I guess I'm staying, Martha heard herself say. Min-jun's hand found hers in the space between them, his grip warm and certain. Then I guess we're in this together. Outside, Seattle passed by in a blur of rain and steel. Inside the car, something shifted between a Mafia boss and his maid. Something that felt dangerously close to trust. Something that would be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. Because the Biko faction was about to make their move. And when they did, Martha would discover that loving a man like Min-jun meant learning to live in the shadows. Learning to fight. Learning that sometimes protection comes with a price written in blood. The Biko faction's response came exactly 72 hours after Park Sung-ho's arrest. Martha was in the kitchen, always the kitchen, as if fate had decided that room would define her entire story, when Jae-sung burst through the door, his usual composure shattered. We need to move now, he said, already reaching for her arm. They're coming. Martha's blood went cold. Who's coming? Everyone. Min-jun appeared in the doorway, and Martha barely recognized him. Gone was the carefully controlled Mafia boss in tailored suits. This was the Phantom in full form, tactical gear, weapon strapped to his body, eyes burning with lethal focus. Martha, listen carefully, he said, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. The Biko faction has sent a full enforcement team. They're not here to negotiate. They're here to send a message. Through the windows, Martha saw headlights cutting through the darkness. Multiple vehicles, moving fast, surrounding the estate like wolves circling prey. Your mother is already secure, Min-jun continued. I had her moved to a private facility in Vancouver this morning. They can't touch her. Relief and terror warred in Martha's chest. What about you? Something flickered across Min-jun's face. Surprise, maybe, that she'd think of him first. I've been preparing for this since the day I took Park's operation apart. This estate has defenses they don't know about. Safe rooms they can't breach. Escape routes they can't find. Gunfire erupted outside. The sound was nothing like movies, sharper, more violent, more real. But Martha pressed because she heard the unspoken word hanging in the air. But I'm done running. Min-jun stepped closer, his hand finding her face with unexpected gentleness. I'm done letting them dictate how I protect what's mine. Tonight, this ends. You'll die, Martha whispered. Maybe. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But you won't. I promise you that.
More gunfire. Closer now.
Jae-sung was speaking rapidly into a radio, coordinating Min-jun's security team, calling in reinforcements. The mansion had become a fortress, and Martha was trapped at its center. Min-jun kissed her forehead, quick, fierce, final. Jae-sung will take you to the panic room. Stay there until…
No.
The word came out stronger than Martha expected. I'm not hiding while you fight my battle. This isn't your battle. Like hell it isn't. Martha grabbed his tactical vest, forcing him to look at her. They came here because of me.
Because you protected me.
Because I refused to be their spy, and you refused to let them punish me for it. This is absolutely my battle. Min-jun stared at her like he was seeing someone new. Someone who'd stepped out of invisibility and into the light. Someone who decided that loving a man like him meant standing beside him, not cowering behind him. You don't know how to fight, he said softly. Then teach me fast. The mansion's security system blared warnings. Perimeter breach. Multiple hostiles. Approaching from all sides. Min-jun made a decision. Martha saw it happen in real time. The shift from protector trying to shield her to partner accepting her choice. Jae-sung, give her a weapon. Jae-sung's eyes went wide. Sir, she's not trained. Give her a weapon. Not a request. A command. Jae-sung pulled a compact pistol from his belt, checked the magazine, clicked the safety. He pressed it into Martha's shaking hands. Point, squeeze, don't pull, he said quickly. Two-handed grip. Aim center mass. Don't hesitate. Martha's fingers closed around the grip. The weight felt wrong, foreign, terrifying. But she didn't put it down. Stay behind me, Min-jun said. If someone gets past me, you shoot them. Don't think. Don't hesitate. Just shoot. The main doors exploded inward. What followed was chaos rendered in strobe light violence. Muzzle flashes in darkness. The sharp crack of gunfire. Men in tactical gear flooding through like a black tide. Min-jun moved like liquid death, each motion economical, precise, lethal. He wasn't fighting. He was eliminating. Martha pressed against a wall, gun raised, trying to track movement in the chaos. A Biko soldier broke through Min-jun's defense, rushing straight at her. Training took over, or instinct, or desperation. She squeezed the trigger. The recoil shocked through her arms. The sound was deafening. The man dropped. Martha stared at what she'd done, at the line she'd just crossed, at the person she'd just become. Don't stop moving. Min-jun's voice cut through her shock. His hand found her arm, pulled her forward. They moved through the mansion like ghosts, using passages Martha didn't know existed, staying ahead of the assault team that had turned his home into a war zone. They reached Min-jun's study, his war room, really. Monitors showed the battle playing out across the estate. His security team was holding, but barely. The Biko faction had come with overwhelming force. They're making a mistake, Min-jun said, watching the screens with cold calculation. They think numbers will win this. They don't understand that I built this place to withstand a siege. He moved to a wall panel, pressed his palm to a scanner. A section of the wall slid open, revealing an arsenal that made Martha's breath catch. Weapons, ammunition, body armor. This wasn't just a home. It was a fortress designed by a man who'd always known war would come to his door. The Biko faction's leader is here, Jae-sung said, pointing to a monitor showing the front gate. Choi Dae-young himself. He's demanding you surrender. Min-jun's laugh was cold. Of course he is. This was never about Martha or Park.
This was about humiliating me.
forcing the Phantom to bow. So what do we do? Martha asked. Min-jun looked at her, and Martha saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. The strategic mind that had built an empire weighing options, measuring costs, planning 3 moves ahead. We give him what he wants, Min-jun said slowly. We give him me. No, Martha started, but Min-jun cut her off. Not surrender. A meeting. Face to face. While he's focused on me, my team moves into position. We end this tonight, but we do it strategically. The tension here is unbelievable, but there's still one more twist coming. What do you think Min-jun should do? Wrong answers only in the comments, because what actually happens is something none of us saw coming. 30 minutes later, Min-jun walked out of his mansion alone. The Biko soldiers had stopped firing, creating an eerie silence broken only by rain beginning to fall. Choi Dae-young stood at the center of the circular driveway, flanked by 20 men with automatic weapons. He was older than Martha expected, gray-haired and distinguished, looking more like a CEO than a crime lord. The Phantom emerges, Choi said in Korean, his voice carrying through the rain. I was beginning to think you'd hide forever. I don't hide, Min-jun replied in English, making sure Martha could hear through the comms device in her ear. She watched from the study monitors, heart hammering. I prepare. Prepare for what? Your funeral? Choi smiled. You embarrass me, Min-jun. Took my operation, freed my assets, arrested my lieutenant. Did you think there would be no consequences? I thought you'd be smarter than this. Min-jun gestured at the assembled force. Coming to my home with an army. Making this personal instead of professional. It's sloppy, Dae-young. Desperate. Choi's smile vanished. Give me the woman. The maid. She's the reason this started. Let me have her, and we can negotiate territory, reach an understanding. Martha's blood turned to ice. They wanted her. After everything, they still wanted to use her as leverage. No, Min-jun said simply. Then you die defending a woman you barely know. How romantic. How stupid. You're right that I barely know her. Min-jun's voice changed, became something softer. 3 months isn't long. But in those 3 months, I watched her choose integrity over survival. I watched her refuse to betray someone who meant nothing to her. I watched her stand in my kitchen and break down rather than compromise who she is. He took a step forward. So, here's what you don't understand, Dae-young. Martha Burris isn't just a woman I'm defending. She's proof that loyalty still exists. That honor isn't dead. That in this world of predators and prey, some people still choose to be neither. How touching, Choi sneered. But ultimately meaningless. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. Am I? Min-jun smiled. Look up. Choi looked. Laser sights appeared across his men's chests.
Dozens of them.
Min-jun's security team had used the conversation as cover, positioning snipers on every rooftop, in every window, behind every defensive position. The Biko faction wasn't surrounding Min-jun. They were surrounded. You came to my home, Min-jun said quietly. My fortress. Did you really think I wouldn't be ready? The standoff hung in the rain for 3 heartbeats. Then Choi Dae-young, leader of the Biko faction, did something unexpected.
He laughed.
Well played, Phantom. Well played. He raised his hands in surrender. It seems we've underestimated you. The Biko faction left Min-jun's estate in a convoy of defeated vehicles, their leader having negotiated a truce that looked more like surrender. Choi Dae-young had recognized when he was beaten, when pride would cost more than it was worth. He'd agreed to withdraw from Seattle entirely, to mark Min-jun's territory as untouchable, to spread word through the underworld that the Phantom was not to be tested. But Martha barely registered the victory. She stood in Min-jun's devastated study, gun still clutched in shaking hands, staring at the monitors showing the retreat. She'd killed someone tonight, crossed a line she could never uncross, become someone she didn't recognize. Martha. Min-jun's voice was gentle, but she couldn't look at him, couldn't face what she'd become in his world. I shot him, she whispered. I pointed a gun at another human being, and I pulled the trigger, and he died. You survived. Min-jun moved closer, carefully taking the weapon from her trembling hands. You protected yourself when someone tried to kill you. That's not murder, Martha. That's survival. Is that what you tell yourself? The words came out harsh, bitter. Every time you pull the trigger, is that what makes it okay? Min-jun was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight she'd never heard before.
No.
I don't tell myself anything. I know exactly what I am, what I've done. I've made peace with being a monster because the alternative was being a victim. He touched her shoulder, gentle despite the violence still humming in his veins. But you're not me, Martha. You don't have to be. Tonight was about survival. Tomorrow, you choose who you become. Martha finally looked at him. Really looked at him. This man who'd protected her, who'd burned down an empire for her, who'd stood in the rain and refused to surrender her even when facing death. Who do you want me to become? She asked. Someone who's free to choose. Min-jun's hand moved to her face, cupping her cheek. Not my maid. Not my responsibility. Not someone trapped in my world because they have nowhere else to go. What if I want to stay? The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Then we negotiate new terms, Min-jun said, echoing words from what felt like a lifetime ago. But first you need to understand what staying means. What loving a man like me costs. 6 weeks later, Martha stood in that same kitchen where everything had begun. But nothing was the same. Her mother was thriving in a private Vancouver facility, receiving world-class care that Martha could never have afforded. The debt that had nearly destroyed her life had been erased, along with 72 others, families freed from Park Sung-ho's predatory trap, given a second chance at dignity. Martha herself was enrolled in nursing school, something she'd dreamed about before life had beaten those dreams out of her. Min-jun had insisted, had arranged everything, had made it clear that she could be anything she wanted in his world. Except invisible. She heard his footsteps before she saw him. 3 months of living in his world had taught her to recognize the subtle sounds of his approach, the way he moved through space like water finding paths of least resistance. You're up early, Min-jun said, moving to stand beside her at the kitchen counter. Couldn't sleep. Martha poured coffee, his black with 1 sugar, hers with cream, the morning ritual they'd developed. I keep thinking about that night. About who I became. Regrets.
No.
Martha turned to face him. That's what scares me. I should regret it, should feel guilty, should be horrified. But mostly I just feel relieved that you're still here. That I'm still here. That we survived. Min-jun took the coffee she offered, his fingers brushing hers. The touch still sent electricity through her, still made her heart race like she was standing on a precipice. You asked me once what loving a man like me costs, Min-jun said quietly. I never gave you a complete answer. Tell me now. He set down his coffee, took both her hands in his. It costs your innocence. Your ability to see the world in simple terms of right and wrong. It costs you the luxury of believing that good people never do bad things, that protection doesn't sometimes require violence. His grip tightened. But it also gives you something most people never find. Someone who sees you completely. Not just the parts you show the world, but the scared, desperate, fighting parts you try to hide. Someone who will burn down empires to keep you safe. Someone who will stand between you and everything that wants to destroy you. Martha felt tears prick her eyes. Is that what you do? Stand between me and destruction. Every day. Min-jun pulled her closer. Every single day, I wake up and choose you. Choose to be more than the phantom. Choose to be the man who protects Martha Burris because she taught me that some things are worth protecting without calculation, without strategy, without asking what it costs. I love you, Martha whispered, the words she'd been holding back finally breaking free. I know I shouldn't. I know you're dangerous and complicated and everything my mother would have warned me about. But I love you anyway. Min-jun's smile was soft, real, the smile he showed only her. I loved you the moment I found you crying in this kitchen. Loved you for choosing loyalty over survival. Loved you for seeing past the monster to the man underneath. He kissed her then, slow and deep, a promise sealed with touch instead of words. And Martha kissed him back, choosing this life, this man, this dangerous love that had saved her from drowning. When they pulled apart, Seattle sunrise was painting the kitchen in shades of gold. What happens now? Martha asked.
Now.
Min-jun's eyes held promises and possibilities. Now we live. I run my empire. You finish school. We figure out how to build something real in the middle of all this darkness. That simple? That complicated?
He laughed.
But I've faced down rival syndicates, survived assassination attempts, and rebuilt an organization from ashes. I think I can handle building a life with the woman I love. Martha leaned into him, letting herself feel safe in a way she never had before. Not the safety of ignorance, but the safety of being truly seen and chosen anyway. The Biko faction won't stay gone forever, she said quietly.
No.
They won't. Min-jun's arms tightened around her. There will always be another threat, another challenge, another war. That's the cost of this world. But I'm done fighting alone. I'm done being the phantom who haunts the city, without purpose beyond survival. He pulled back to look at her. You asked me once what I wanted to become. I want to be the man worthy of Martha Burris. The man who uses his power to protect instead of just destroy. The man who makes the city safer for people like you, people just trying to survive. It was a promise. A transformation. The beginning of something neither of them could have imagined that night in the kitchen when a maid broke down and a mafia boss chose gentleness over dismissal. Then that's who we'll build together, Martha said. And in that moment, in that kitchen where everything had begun, they chose each other. Chose the complicated, dangerous, beautiful mess of loving someone from a different world. Chose to stand together against whatever came next. Because that's what love is, really. Not the fairy tale kind that solves everything with a kiss, but the fierce, fighting kind that says, I see your darkness, and I'm staying anyway. The kind that transforms monsters into men and invisible women into warriors. The kind that begins with tears in a kitchen at 2 a.m. and grows into something that changes everything. So here's what I want you to take away from Martha and Min-jun's story. Sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expect. Sometimes protection comes from unlikely places. Sometimes love means standing beside someone in their darkness instead of trying to drag them into the light. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be seen, truly seen, by someone who has every reason to look away. If this story moved you, if it made you think about loyalty and love and the choices we make in desperate moments, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever had someone unexpectedly protect you when you needed it most? Have you ever been that person for someone else? Your stories matter. Your experiences add to this conversation about what it means to show up for each other. And if you want more stories like this, stories about complicated people making impossible choices, about love that defies logic, about finding light in the darkest places, hit that subscribe button. Because next week, I'm bringing you a story that will absolutely wreck you in the best way possible. It's about a trauma surgeon who saves a hitman's life in her ER, not knowing he's there to kill her mentor. About the impossible choice she faces when he comes back, not for revenge, but for her. About what happens when the line between enemy and savior blurs so completely you can't tell which side of it you're standing on. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until then, remember Martha's choice. Remember that sometimes loving someone means accepting all of them, the light and the shadow, the gentleman and the ghost. Remember that protection is a form of love, and love is the most dangerous choice we ever make. Thank you for spending this time with me, for investing in Martha and Min-jun's journey, for being part of this community that believes in the power of complicated, messy, real love stories. I'll see you in the next one. Stay fierce, stay loyal, and never apologize for choosing love, even when it's complicated. Especially when it's complicated.